Let me ask you about that constant threat that Tom was just talking about. Again, this is somebody protesting what is happening in Gaza, what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza, targeting individuals marching for hostages in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah. I don't think it's about geopolitics. I think it's about whether we still believe that Jews have the right to be safe at our synagogues, at peaceful protests, in diaspora communities, thousands of miles away from Gaza. And I think what is important to say right now is that anti-Jewish hate and violence are unacceptable. And I think you, Katie, have done that and shown moral clarity in your show. And I really hope more of your colleagues will do this, because I've never had the illusion that the far right is on our side. Their hatred doesn't surprise us. And that's why hearing President Trump making a statement today and using this horrific attack on American Jews to fan the flame of hostility towards immigrants is truly sickening. He didn't use the word anti-Semitism once in his statement. But the silence or worse that we feel, or the justification from some part of the progressive left, the political home of most Jews, including myself, cuts much deeper. And that silence is felt acutely because we've stood shoulder to shoulder in every fight for justice. And now we're asking, will you show up for us?
Well, let's talk about the discomfort there, because there are a lot of folks who are looking at what's happening in Gaza, especially what's been happening in the last few days. And they're saying to themselves, Hen, that this is really tough. I mean, they're using stronger language than that. It's sickening. It's horrible. I can't believe that this is still happening. I can't believe that America is involved with this. And that discomfort, that anger, it comes in the form of an outlet where they express themselves on social media. And they feel like they need to express themselves. They've got to get it out there because they're not going to stand by and watch what's happening. How do you speak to that, and also speak to what we saw yesterday, what we saw 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., and what you say Jews are feeling all around the country right now?
I think that a lot of us are feeling this pain. The hostage families in Israel have been one of the most outspoken parts of Israeli society, calling to end the war. They want their family members back. And this rally was about the hostages, and it was for peace. And I think that empathy doesn't require agreement with the Israeli government's policy. In fact, you can condemn it and you can criticize the Israeli government. Many of us Jews oppose their actions today. I think that when a community is being targeted with violence and hate, we have to be honest and say that digital rhetoric radicalizes people, and false narratives like the one we heard that 14,000 babies will die in 48 hours last week. They're not just misinformation, they become fuel. And we need to be very mindful in the way that we discuss these issues. Slogans like globalize the Intifada or end Zionist, which is what the attacker said, they're not abstract slogans. They are part of a feedback loop that turns digital incitement into real-world violence. And there's a dangerous trend of accepting what Hamas is saying in their statements and then just running with them without verifying. And, we are the ones that are paying the price. So I'm saying we can't criticize. We should show empathy to the Jewish community, and we should be just very vigilant with how we're using our words online.
So how do you define anti-Semitism online? What is the line? Where is the line when it is crossed? When it becomes not just voicing criticism, but then becomes anti-Semitic and becomes potentially inspiring for hate that spills out into the real world in acts of violence?
Right, exactly. I mean, anti-Semitism doesn't need a swastika to be deadly. It adapts, it evolves. And today it wears many faces, including the one of progressive language. And we hear from people using academic jargons and present itself as if they're calling for justice while saying things like, globalize the Intifada, which is about violence, or end Zionist. That's what he said when he was throwing Molotov cocktails on an 88-year-old Holocaust survival. You can care deeply about Palestinian rights. I know I do, and you should demand justice for civilians in Israel and in Gaza. I know I have, and I continue to do that. But turning Jews into targets for violence doesn't help Palestinians. If you care about Palestinian lives, don't let this cause be hijacked by hatred. It doesn't just harm Jews, it undermines the cause itself. And what really troubles me is that Palestinians are out in the Gaza Strip protesting against Hamas, and it just doesn't look like Western activists actually care about them when they protest in support of of Hamas at the exact same time. These narratives that cast Jews as inhumane enemy lead to very inhumane results.
I just want to add this. Shira Weiss, she leads Run for Their Lives, the organization that was marching in solidarity or to remind people about the hostages that are still being held captive in Gaza, said this today on one of our other shows. We are an apolitical organization. We strongly believe this is an international humanitarian crisis. Different religions, ethnicities, and nationalities were taken hostage. We always aim for walks to be peaceful, nonviolent, and really as a means to raise awareness about the situation. Hen Mazik, thank you so much for joining us. Tom Winter, thank you for all the investigation details as well. Appreciate it.